Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2026 annual Dr. Helen Coyle Science Research Symposium. We're so excited to have you here tonight to celebrate the incredible work of our student researchers. My name is Sam.
My name is Lena.
And my name is Shreya. We'll be your MCs for tonight. Also, just a quick shout out to Helen and Caroline for designing the booklet tonight, which contains our program.
We want to thank all the parents, family members, and friends here this evening. Your support and encouragement have meant the world to us during this long and challenging journey.
We are grateful for the opportunity to showcase our hard work from this past year. From biology, physics, engineering, computer science, and more, the science researchers of Tenafly High School have explored a wide range of topics. This symposium is a chance for our student researchers to showcase their hard work, innovative thinking, and real-world scientific inquiry.
Before we begin, we'd like to thank a few important people who made today possible. First, a huge thank you to our science research teachers, Mr. Brandstetter, Ms. Keener, and Ms. Subramaniam, for their guidance throughout the year.
We would also like to thank the mentors and professionals who have supported our students in labs, through Zoom calls, and in every step of their journey.
And of course, thank you to our families and friends in the audience for being here to support our young scientists.
Our biggest thank you goes out to someone who is no longer here with us today, Dr. Helen Coyle. Dr. Coyle founded our Science Research Symposium 14 years ago and initiated this very symposium.
Before getting into the symposium we have planned for you today, we would like to share about the program that we're a part of. The Tenafly High School Methods of Science Research program is a 3-year course in which students immerse themselves in any area of science they desire.
In the program, we learn to read peer-reviewed articles, create literature reviews, present articles, search for a mentor in a university, organization, or institution, and ultimately conduct original research. In addition to the intensive research work, we keep a detailed lab notebook and a portfolio of our work.
Now, let's dive into the real stars of the show, our researchers. One student from each class will present their project, and after, we'll open the floor up to a few questions from our audience.
Now let's welcome Rekha Chakrabarti, who will be introducing our first presenter, Sung-Hun Ju.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Rekha, and I'm thrilled to introduce one of our seniors, Sung-Hun Ju. So Hoon will be presenting his project titled Functional Validation of Regulatory SNPs in Genes Associated with IBD and Multiple Sclerosis using allele-specific methylation and CRISPR-Cas9. So Hoon completed his project under the mentorship of Dr. Benjamin Tycho at Hackensack CDI. With this project, Hoon won first in cell biology, first in cancer research, and second in human genetics at the 2025 Terra North Jersey STEM Fair, and won third in cell biology at New Jersey Academy of Science. Next year, Hoon will be attending Cornell University to study biological engineering. Please give a warm welcome to Hoon.
I'm actually going to let Hoon go ahead and present. So I'd like you to present, but afterwards I'd like to take a little moment of time in the program.
Okay, thank you, Rekha, for introducing me. Good evening, everyone. My name is Hoon. I'll be presenting my research that I have been working on for the past 2 years since my sophomore year. And is in its final phase currently. So before I dive deeper into my project, I would like to introduce 2 diseases that I focused in this project. First being the inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, which is an autoimmune disease that causes inflammation in the digestive tract. The second disease would be multiple sclerosis, MS, which is also an autoimmune disease that disrupts nerve signals and causes numbness and muscle weakness. So when scientists try to identify the genetic cause of diseases like IBD and MS, they use a statistical data called GWAS. GWAS data identifies individual DNA base pairs, also known as SNPs or SNPs, that are potentially disease associated. This is a widely used tool by scientists, but it has several limitations, one of which is linkage disequilibrium, LD, which simply means that if there's too many SNPs that are associated with a disease that are too clustered with each other in a small area, then the GWAS can only identify some of those SNPs, but not all of them. So some people might wonder, how can individual DNA base pairs influence a disease? There are many methods, but one method that our lab focused on was DNA methylation, which methyl groups, CH3 groups, are added to the cytosine bases of the DNA, and this often silences our gene. So individual DNA base pairs, SNPs, that are particularly in the gene regulatory SNPs, are SNPs, accept or reject certain proteins that cause methylation. So how can we use DNA methylation to improve GWAS? We focused on a specific pattern of methylation called allele-specific methylation, where we have two alleles, one from mom and dad, and those alleles have a different level of methylation between the two. So specifically, in our previous study, we found out that cancer cells often have higher levels of ASM and more frequent levels of ASM compared to normal cells. And therefore, using this knowledge, we identified about 15,000 regions with ASM and identified RSNPs in those regions, and also filtered out those RSNPs that are nearby the GWAS identified SNPs. So we speculated that those newly identified SNPs could be a new SNP that we weren't able to find in the traditional genomic data. So we found two SNPs through our research. First of all is a SNP called RS146 in a gene called plow. This is a screenshot of the genome browser of this particular SNP. It looks quite messy, but the only thing that you have to know is that there's the target SNP, and then just a few kilobase pairs away, we have the GWAS identified SNP, which is associated with the inflammatory bowel disease. The second SNP of focus we found in this project was RS953 in the RCBTB1 gene. Similar to the last one, there's the target SNP, and a few kilobase pairs away, there's our GWAS identified SNP, and that is associated with the multiple sclerosis. So we have to be clear that the two SNPs that we found through this method are just candidates, and we need actual experimentation to validate their function further in influencing diseases, particularly through DNA methylation. So we also want to know that whether its function of the SNPs depends on the disease or cell type. So we will be testing various cell lines in our project. So for our experimentation, we built a CRISPR gene editing tool to precisely delete our target SNPs. And we would compare the changes in methylation before and after the deletion, where we hypothesized that a gain or loss of methylation would prove that the SNP is functional, and a no change in methylation would prove that the SNP is not functional. So the first step would obviously be designing the CRISPR. We do this through an online template, where we first design the single guide RNA, where it tells the Cas9 protein where to cut. And once the Cas9 protein cuts the DNA, we replace it with a new DNA strand called HDR plus strand, which contains the point mutation SNP. So we send this information to a company, and a company makes a physical CRISPR plasmid and sends it back to our lab. Then we transfect it, means to introduce our new plasmid into our host cell, where we use a method called electroporation, where we apply an electrical pulse through the cell, and it creates a pore, and a charge difference between in and out of the cell. And this causes the plasmid to go into the cell. So once we culture the cell and extract the DNA from the cell, we do something called bisulfite sequencing. So we can check how the methylation levels changed. So what bisulfite sequencing does is that it converts unmethylated cytosines into uracil base pairs. So we know which cytosine is methylated or not. And then that result is visualized through a platform called QMA. This is an example of a QMA plot where we have two alleles, of course, one from mom and one from dad. And each circle represents one cytosine base pair, where the black circle, this is kind of important, black circle represents a methylated cytosine, and the unmethylated cytosine is the white circle. So these are our results. We first tested with our first SNP, which is RS146, related to the IBD and the plow gene. We first tested with the HCT116 cell line, which is a colorectal cancer cell. You can just look at the two squares inside the red box. The top one is the wild type reads, which represents the one before the deletion. The bottom one is the mutated allele, which is the allele after the deletion. So as you can see, after we delete the SNP, this is the region that we deleted. After we delete the SNP, we see a significant gain of black circles, which means that we have a significant gain of methylation. This proves that our SNP, RS146, is a functional SNP because it inhibits methylation when it is present. Our second cell line was the COL320 cell, which was a colon cancer cell. Similar to the last results, we see a significant gain of methylation after the SNP deletion, which also proves that our SNP is functional. For our final cell line in the IBD plow gene was the MM1S multiple myeloma cell. This time we deleted two different portions of the DNA. One would be the off-target deletion, where we would delete a portion of the DNA that is far away from our target SNP. And we see, as you can see, barely any change, white and white. However, when we made an on-target deletion, where we deleted the target SNP of our interest, we saw a significant gain of methylation again. So this proves that the distance from the SNP really matters in the SNPs causing the DNA methylation. Our next SNP was RS953, related to multiple sclerosis. We tested with the GAM12878 lymphoblastoid cell. We see white to partial black, which means that there's a gain of methylation, again proving that this SNP is also a functional SNP. Same with the HT29 colon cancer cell, white to partial black, signifying a gain of methylation. And for our final results, we see an opposite effect, where we already have a full methylation in the wild type reads, and then when we delete the SNP, we see a loss of methylation, which still proves that our SNP is functional, but also proves that the SNP and the methylation relationship is always cell type specific and disease specific. So through this research, we have three main takeaways. One is that we saw gain of methylation or loss of methylation when the SNPs were deleted. This proves that the target SNPs that we found were affecting the disease through DNA methylation. The second takeaway is that we saw a greater magnitude of change in methylation levels as we deleted the region closer to our target SNP, which proves that the distance matters in SNPs influencing the methylation. Finally, we saw different results for different cell and disease types, which shows that the SNP methylation relationship is cell type specific. So in the grand scheme of things, the research as a whole proves two things. One is that the SNPs that we found each contribute to the pathogenesis of IBD and MS. through specifically regulating DNA methylation, and that, more importantly, that the DNA methylation analysis and the use of CRISPR-Cas9 could be an effective post-GWAS tool where we can find new DNA SNPs that are associated with the disease that weren't previously identified by the traditional genomic data. So with that being said, thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Are there any questions?
So how did you get the initial methylation data that you used to run your GWAS?
So that should be done experimentally. So we run multiple of these QMA plots without any deletion. So we just don't look at this part, and we just look at these two, like so. For example, we see complete white in the ref allele and complete black in the out allele. This means there's a discrepancy in methylation levels between the two alleles. So that's how we find the ASM levels. Yes. For the most part, yes. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I asked him if the cell lines he picked were the model cell lines for the pathogenesis of this diseases.
It was based on two conditions. First, it had to be similar to what our disease is. So this case, for IBD, we picked the colorectal and colon cancer cells. And then for MS, we picked leukemia and lymphoblastoid cells. The second condition would be our lab's familiarity with the cell line. So if we used a lot of cell lines that we are like more familiar with, then we use those as well. Yep.
Hun, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's so inspiring, and really the level of molecular genetics that you have understood, even with GWAS and then doing a CRISPR technique, that's at the high school level, more than impressive.
Thank you.
So I'm sure your lab is going to really miss you after you leave. And to everybody else who is here, this is the current flavor, as you would call in molecular biology, because this is epigenetics. It's not what your DNA is, but how your DNA is getting modified. And right now, the scientific community understands that it is just not the genetics that you're born with, but how methylation and demethylation, for instance, influences the particular protein function. It's no longer just genes, but epigenetics is far more impactful than the genetics a person is born with. I have a couple of questions for you,
yes,
just out of curiosity, not about the work that this particular thing alone. In something like multiple myeloma, you have looked at one cell line. I do not know what restriction of multiple myeloma can be any of the IgGs.
Yes.
And similarly, in multiple sclerosis, it is not just the neuronal cells. I failed to register which particular cell line. I know you have the name of the cell line, but I did not register what it was. Was it liver or was it neuronal cell that you were looking at?
It was, I think it was mostly liver cells,
Okay.
because our lab, for the other research that we're doing, we're looking for the correlation between liver cancer and Down syndrome in mouse models.
Yes.
So we have plenty of liver cell lines in our lab.
Did you see a difference, number one, in the methylation site, and number two, in the degree of methylation in different cell lines? That is, even if it's just multiple myeloma,
Yes.
between subtypes of multiple myeloma. I know there are no subtypes for multiple sclerosis, but there's definitely is for multiple myeloma and several other autoimmune diseases, because it directly is affected by the kind of antibody, the CD restriction. So.
In terms of the degree of methylation, this part I skipped because of time limits. But if you see, there's a analysis about chromatin states, where if the chromatin is more tightly coiled,
Correct.
it's likely to be more methylated.
Right.
So heterochromatins, for example, are more methylated, and euchromatins are more unmethylated. So each cell line over here, like K562, this one is a weak enhancer,
Correct.
which is a euchromatin with low methylation levels. So these are how like each cell types differ in chromatin states and have different levels of methylation.
Very good. So he's using graduate level vocabulary and language. Fantastic. Really,
Thank you.
it's very impressive.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Sung-hoon. That was amazing. I'm Grace Wolfslegel. I'm the science supervisor. I'm just taking a little brief break here. I wanted to, obviously, the symposium is called the Dr. Helen Coyle Symposium for good reason. As you heard, she helped establish this program in 2012, and unfortunately, she passed in 2023. So I do want to, for those of you who did not really have the pleasure of knowing her, I want to take a moment to just explain who she was a little bit. I also want to announce the recipient of the Dr. Helen Coyle Love of Science, Love of Science, and Love of THS community. So one thing is that if you worked with her, you knew that she had an amazing sense of curiosity. She was committed to excellence. She was recognized by Princeton University for her contributions to physics education. But beyond that, her curiosity and her hard work, she was such a kind person, and she was so committed to service to the community and to others. So I'm going to do the following. I'm going to ask the recipient to come up here and stand awkwardly with me while I say some things about why he reflects the spirit of Dr. Helen Coyle. And then Jim Coyle is here to actually give the award. So Yuval, who is also going to be our next speaker, Yuval, please come up. He did not know he was going to receive this. Yuval. Okay. Okay. Come stand in the light. Okay. So, Yuval is one of the defining members of Tenafly High School's STEM community, not because he seeks recognition, but because he consistently supports others with humility, dedication, and a genuine love of science and engineering. Personally recruited into the science research program by Dr. Coyle, he reflects the qualities she valued most: curiosity, perseverance, kindness, and a commitment to helping others succeed. Though through his engineering and coding skills are exceptional, they are, what stands out most is how he uses them to support those around him, whether debugging code late at night, sometimes very late at night, troubleshooting designs, or helping teammates stay calm before competitions. Over the years, Yuval has become a quiet but essential leader within the Science Olympiad's engineering division, and now also serves as co-president of the Tenafly Robotics Club. He has devoted countless hours to designing and programming robots while patiently mentoring younger students and fostering an environment where collaboration, creativity, and learning thrive. So, Yuval is the leader and teammate that others rely on when challenging
bubbles, the warm water, the person sitting next to you speaking on their phone. And one day, the instructor was talking about sanitation guidelines, especially when it comes to sanitizing the jets and the pipes in the pedicure machines. And the proper way of doing it is running a disinfectant solution for 10 to 15 minutes in between each client. When was the last time you saw that happen? So let's discuss why that needs to be done. It's because the water from the previous client, the client before them, and the client before them mixes in with your water when you turn the jets on, making the water a cesspool of dirty water. That was when I realized I never got a clean pedicure. I went home and I did my research. There's a study out of Rutgers that surveyed women that go to nail salons and hair salons regularly, three or more times a year. Over half of them reported skin rashes or nail problems after the visits. Podiatrists say that fungal infections from pedicures are one of the most common visits they have patients to come in for. The worst part? I had no idea. There was no PSA, there was no the more you know announcement, there was no sign. This whole system quietly looked away. And that was the day that I got serious about my work. Because if it was true about pedicures, what else was true that nobody bothered to tell us? And lately, there is one thing I cannot stop thinking about. That is, girls your age are currently getting advice from TikTok and YouTube. Advice from strangers, advice from influencers, and advice from kids like yourselves. But the issue is, they're trying to get you to buy products that are not meant for your skin. They can actually damage your skin. And nobody's stopping them. There's no pop-up that you see before you reach checkout that says, hey, you shouldn't be buying that. There is a peer-reviewed study that Northwestern published on skincare videos made by girls aged 7 to 18. They found the average girl is using 6 skincare products a day. Some are using more than 12. They found 11 potentially irritating ingredients in the average routine. And in one video they included in the study, a girl applied 10 products to her face in 6 minutes. And on camera, you can watch her face start to burn. And at the end of the video, she has a visible reaction to her face. Let's talk about some viral TikTok trends. There's a trend called sunscreen contouring, where girls put sunscreen only on parts of their face so the sun can tan the rest and give them contoured cheekbones. They are deliberately letting themselves burn. This actually went viral on TikTok. There is a trend where girls are pouring lemon juice on their skin, sometimes mixed with aspirin and baking soda, to peel their face at home. Lemon juice on your face. It's acid. It causes real chemical burns, especially if you go in the sun afterwards. And the rosemary oil trend. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't. Almost 1 billion views between all the tags. Promises thicker hair. If used properly, most are using it improperly. It can irritate your scalp and make your hair shred more, not less. So the first thing that I would like for all the girls to walk out with is to know that you should ask an expert or a dermatologist when it comes to skincare about what you should be doing, not influencers. These are people that have went to school, and these are the people that have your best things at heart to be able to help you. A lot of them are on social media, and a lot of them will be happy to answer your questions. That day in school taught me something I think about all the time now, and that is that the beauty industry is really good at convincing you that what you need is out there somewhere. A product, a routine, or a version of yourself that you haven't met yet. But here's what's really true. You already have what you need. Everything they're selling you, all the skincare, all the makeup, all the trends, none of it is going to make you more beautiful if you're using it to become someone you aren't. It's just going to make you frustrated. Chasing someone else's beauty is the one thing that actually makes you less beautiful because it makes you less you. Real beauty is confidence. It's a girl who knows who she is. And when she walks into a room, you know it. It has nothing to do with what she looks like. Your skincare can support it, but it can't create it. So take care of your skin, ask all the right questions, but don't do any of it to become someone different. Do it because you already matter. So the last thing, and then we can move on to our discussion. Tonight, when you get home, I have one thing to ask from you, and that is go and stand in front of a mirror and look at yourself for 3 seconds, not too long. And don't scan yourself for problems. Don't nitpick. Just look at yourself and say, girl, I look good. And that is it. That is going to work, and if you continue doing it, eventually you will forget about all this nonsense. That's it, 3 seconds, 1 line. Someone told me the truth that day in nail school, and I'm still grateful. And that is what we're all doing here today, teaching you. Thank you.
See what I mean? It is now my pleasure to introduce our panel moderator, Yelena LaForgia. Yelena is an experienced finance executive currently serving as Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer in the insurance industry. With a CPA background and deep experience across financial strategy and operations, Yelena brings both rigor and perspective to every conversation. Yelena is a recognized...
To do so, topology optimization does 2 things. Firstly, topology optimization aims to sustain the durability of the frame while actively reducing the weight through iterative process. Then, through the reduced weight, it will maintain the maximum speed instead of reducing the maximum speed due to an increase in durability, and it will hopefully increase the acceleration. And due to topology optimization not inherently increasing the cost, it will hopefully maintain the low-cost barrier of entry for implementation for hobbyists, researchers, and active application like search and rescue. Then, to actually produce this, the first step is through CAD, or computer-aided design, and I use 2 softwares for this. The first of which is Onshape, and the second is Fusion 360. In Fusion 360, the first goal was to design the preserved geometries, which are the, as you can see in figure 3, the mounting points for the motors, flight controllers, electronic speed controllers, and receivers. These preserved geometries will later in the optimization not be altered in order to maintain these distances and locations so everything assembles properly. Then, in figure 4, you can see the obstacle geometries, which is the second phase, where I basically outline where these electronics will fit, so later the optimizer won't optimize into these regions and conflict with the electronic components. And lastly, I designed the toroidal propeller as I wanted to maintain the FDM printing throughout the whole entire drone, and as seen right here.
I'm just going to be his Vanna White.
As seen right here. Then, after performing the CAD and initial design of these important components, I went to use the Fusion 360 generative design, which aims to maintain the weight, minimize the weight while maintaining the durability for the specific application. In order to do this, I had to set 4 constraints. These constraints being the preserved geometries, which were spoken about, the obstacle geometries, which, by the way, the preserved geometries are the green sections you can see in figure 6, and the red being the obstacle geometries where the optimizer shouldn't interfere with. Then the load cases, which are the estimated forces acting on the drone, such as gravity and drag. And then load constraints, which are the fixed points at which the drone would rotate or the forces would act towards. Then in figure 7, after setting these constraints and running the solve for the generative design, you can see the iterative process the topology optimization took to get to the final version. And then in figure 8, you can see that final version on its own. Then, before actually manufacturing and actually printing and building this drone, I had to select the correct polymer for this application. And traditionally, there's 2 low-cost polymers for this application, being PLA and PETG. And in order to compare these, I ran for 2 tests, and I concluded 2 things, being the density, tensile strength, flexural strength, and printability. And after analyzing the results from each test by printing, as you can see there, specific specimens to perform the tests in a tensile strength machine and a 3-point test setup, I obtained that PLA is better fit for this application due to its higher tensile strength, flexural strength, and overall, from a more personal experience, being much better in printability and much easier to use in future replicability. Then, after selecting the material, being PLA, I went on to 3D printing and then measuring the weight of the drone, as that was the main purpose of the optimization. And it ended up weighing at 69.65 grams, which is under the threshold of 70 grams to be considered ultralight weight. And then after optimizing it, I also ran my own independent FEA analysis to see what's the maximum force the drone can withstand, specifically a static stress study, where it was able to withstand 120 newtons of force on each motor arm before deforming or snapping, which is equivalent to that of a carbon fiber 5mm frame, which is traditionally used in these kinds of quadcopters. Additionally, compared to the original DJI FPV, which I mentioned earlier, its frame weighed in at 130 to 150 grams, which is about 2 times the weight of the generated frame, while being the equivalent size and equivalent strength. Yeah, we can. Oh, sorry, I didn't find it. Okay. After performing the weight test, I went into performing the real world test, which included testing its horizontal speed, where I flew the drone using the ArduPilot firmware, and this logged the data on board in binary format, and then I downloaded and exported it into CSV for analysis. And through the figure, I was able to see that the maximum horizontal velocity of the drone logged at 29 meters per second, compared to the original DJI FPV, which, based on online information, logs at about 27 to 39 meters per second. And it also accelerated from 0 to 29 meters per second in approximately 2.5 seconds, compared to the original DJI FPV, which accelerates from 0 to 25 in 2 seconds. And it did all this while still maintaining that low cost, which I talked about earlier, as after accounting for all the electronic components and the estimated cost for 3D printing, it came in at approximately $83 compared to the $400 cost of the original DJI FPV, which is the fifth of the cost. And to conclude that, at the fifth of the cost, it was competitive to the low-end DJI's speed and acceleration. It was also classified as ultralight weight, which is under what the DJI frame and carbon fiber frames are classified in, while withstanding equivalent forces. And like stated, it was lower in weight, specifically half the weight of the DJI FPV frame. And through the research, I was also able to determine that PLA is a better fit than PETG for this application. Now, for more future applications and where this research could be taken to later on, there's 3 main branches. The first of which is enhanced optimization. I used a stress-constrained optimization, where I set my material stress factor to 1, where if it went under that, then it would redesign or add material. And compared to that, there's other versions like CFD, computational fluid dynamics, or shape optimization, which could, in theory, further reduce the weight or improve aerodynamic or other structural efficiencies. And this could lend to better results. But unfortunately, Fusion 360 and tools online don't offer access to those advanced optimizations due to computational intensity, usually. Then the second improvement is battery efficiency. As I mentioned, the third trade-off was the lower flight time. And this could be tackled with energy recovery techniques, which has already been being worked on, or testing a lighter weight battery configuration, as the battery was the single heaviest component in the whole drone. And the last branch for this research in the future is application. And due to its low-cost 3D printing and high-speed nature, it could be applied for search and rescue, as it would be possible to deploy a large quantity due to its lower price and cover more ground at a faster rate. And due to its 3D printed flexibility, it could be designed for specific load or payload cases, and therefore serve as a very adaptable carrier drone. And lastly, it could also be applied in storm monitoring, as storm monitoring drones tend to enter dangerous environments where there's a risk in damage or destruction of the drone, and a low-cost drone would reduce that risk. Here's some of the resources that I use, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Yuval, for the fascinating presentation. It really took off. Let's take a moment for a few questions.
Can I?
Questions?
Hi, I have a quick question. So my main one is, can you go back to the FEA analysis real quick? Sure. So my main question is, the only force applied that you actually used was downwards force, correct? So this is just based off of the actual propulsion, right? Like you were just saying that 120 newtons of downwards force. From what I can see, there's like arrows there, right, pointed downwards. My question is, like, some of the parts of the drone seem to be like the only places of force seem to be on the propellers. Did you account for, or are you planning to account for other parts of the drone that may undergo certain types of stress, like collisions or other kinds of things? And do you have ways to counteract that in the actual software? Like, is there a way to just optimize for that? Do you know?
Okay, so in figure 10, this FEA analysis was a downward force onto the maximum weight the drone could withstand. And earlier, in here, I think it's a better representation. It might be a bit small, but there's two forces, mainly the drag, and also estimated diagonal force, which accounts for the tilt of the drone when flying, and the gravity force. And when it performs topology optimization and generative design, the Fusion 360 software iteratively does FEA analysis on every step to check if it can withstand those forces without reaching critical points, and slowly reduces or adds material as necessary. And while that isn't all the forces, especially like you mentioned, which was a good call, collision, it definitely does account for all forces, the major forces experienced during flight. So while this FEA analysis here only represents the max weight that the drone could withstand, because that's also the publicly available information to compare to carbon fiber frames, the actual forces which I optimized with included also some horizontal forces and the drag, which I assume you were referencing, that the drone experiences.
So my only question is, like, if you were to, let's say, redesign this or optimize it further, maybe would you take into account possible, like, minimum size requirements? Is there ways to, like, in the generative design, my only question is, like, some of the beams seem a little bit sketchy, I would say, like, a little bit, might end up breaking from my experience with 3D printing. So I'm saying that, is there ways to, let's say, account for, like, horizontal forces, or maybe even put into the model, like, a minimum like diameter requirement for all beams in the design? Do you know if that's possible? I don't know. I mean, this is just theoretical, so yeah.
To my experience using the Fusion 360 software, it wasn't customizable to determine the minimum thickness of like a beam, but it is optimizing for the forces applied, and therefore that, for instance, let's take the right bottom beam being as thin, doesn't necessarily would break under those load conditions. Under a collision, it could potentially break, but under the forces applied during just normal flight, that beam doesn't take much of that force, so it wouldn't snap as easily. It more so just spreads the force throughout the drone. That's what it's optimizing for, basically.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Aerodynamically, how does this drone compare to like standard conventional ones on the market?
I didn't perform a airflow test compared to the other models, because that would also mean I would need a 3D design of the original FPV design, and that's where more of CFD optimization comes in, where I account for airflow and other things. When it comes to optimization, this drone is more aimed at reducing the weight in terms of the forces acting on it, not the airflow. Yeah, that too, and because it matched the speed at a lower end original DJI FPV, you could assume that it's as aerodynamically efficient, but that can't be proven unless you actually calculate the drag.
Because you mentioned that the energy efficiency was lower, right? Like the battery drained faster, so perhaps there's some trade-offs in the aerodynamic structure.
The lower flight time mentioned in the trade-offs isn't necessarily because of the because of the amount of thrust the propellers need to push forward, rather the cheap nature of like low-cost batteries. It could be because of the thrust, but because it's the same 6-cell battery, it produces the same amount of current, and therefore the motors take the same amount of power from both power supplies, because to produce maximum speed, you have to anyway thrust fully. So it's not that one drone had to thrust less in order to maintain that speed than the other. I hope that answered the question.
I'm not going to sound super smart. Why don't we fly it?
When are we flying?
Take it off.
I don't have my controller. I can turn it on. I don't have my controller here. I need to drive home. I don't have my controller. I can't lift it off. Sorry.
This is a fully in-house developed project, right from conception to where you all has it. He did not have an external mentor. I'm not an engineering person. It's almost 100% him. I only asked him questions during the process. So, and we also did not have the setup to compare it with commercially available. We had to work with what we had. The setup that we have.
I wanted to ask about the unique shape of your propellers. I noticed that the drone that you were comparing it to, the $400 drone, did not use those like toroidal propellers. I wanted to ask if there was a specific reason for that. Like, does it improve the weight to sort of efficiency ratio?
So for whoever doesn't know, toroidal propellers was an MIT designed propeller aimed at reducing the noise but maintaining the efficiency of the propeller itself. And my specific reason for using toroidal propellers over like a more natural, normal design was due to the fact of it being FDM printed, and it being a closed design increases its durability and impact and reduces its chance of breaking. And overall, it's proved that, although I haven't tested it against other propellers, as that wasn't the main intention of the research, it proved to be effective enough when flown.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Yuval, for your presentation.
Finally, let's welcome Edward Lee, who will be introducing Hillary Z.
Hey guys, my name's Edward, and I'm really glad that I'm the one introducing one of our seniors and one of my good friends, Hillary Shi. So Hillary's going to be presenting a project called Higher Harmonic Analysis of Dynamic Microcantilever Resonance for Electrochemomechanical Coupling during charge storage. She did a project with the mentorship of Dr. Dongwei Dong at Rowan University. Her research explores methods for analyzing signs of failure for alternative energy storage systems. And it shows the months of dedication and hard work that she really put in. Hillary's going to be attending Harvard University to study chemical and physical biology at Harvard College. She's really great, asks great questions all the time, and we're all going to miss her. So let's give a really warm welcome to Hillary.
Okay, hi. So, like Edward said, my name is Hillary, and I did my project on analyzing the high harmonics of nickel oxide-coated microcantilevers to determine electrochemomechanical coupling during charge storage. So as the global warming crisis continues to worsen and we need to pivot to renewable energy like wind and solar, as you know, these sources of energy are infamously erratic, and we need to store their power output during peak hours to use later on. However, batteries alone aren't enough to fulfill this demand, and so we are exploring battery alternatives such as pseudocapacitors, and namely in this project, nickel oxide pseudocapacitors. These work through fast reversible Faraday electron transfers, and they offer higher power density and better cycling lifespans than batteries, as well as a higher energy density than traditional capacitors. As is the case with all energy storage systems, we need to monitor them for signs of degradation and failure before larger issues occur. And as is the case with batteries, pseudocapacitors suffer from the issue of mechanical degradation at the interface between the electrode and the electrolyte. However, there has been no prior research on in operando monitoring of nickel oxide charge-discharge cycles and the ensuing electrochemomechanical processes. Traditional methods have focused on X-ray and Raman spectroscopy, which are expensive, bulky, and difficult to implement in field. However, my project uses microcantilevers, which are like little beams that are attached at one end, and they're highly sensitive for these types of processes, especially the higher harmonics. And I'm using what's called dynamic mode. So this tracks the eigenfrequency, or the natural frequency at which the microcantilever vibrates without an external pressure. Microcantilevers have had prior applications in biosensing, but those have been mostly the static form, which measure the deflection due to an external stress. So the purpose of this project is to link changes and trends in higher harmonics to the electrochemomechanical processes and charging and discharging cycles in these pseudocapacitive materials. So the physical setup is as follows. So the microcantilever is mounted on one end, and the deflection is detected with a laser, which reflects off the back third into a photodiode. Although this is also very bulky, it's very easy to transition to a piezoresistor, which is equally sensitive, and this is mostly a proof of concept. So what happens is the microcantilever is double coated, so on both sides, around 450 nanometers of nickel oxide, and it's charged and discharged in a lithium perchlorate solution with an initial measurement taken in air as a control. And the graphing was done with R and the analysis with Python. So here are the results. We ran 3 trials with identically fabricated microcantilevers. These are the megahertz data, and these are the kilohertz. So this is like a snapshot of the 0 to 0.1 megahertz range. And although it's lower in frequency, it should still provide us with high harmonics data. So we did find one significant sign of degradation, and that is irreversible peak shift. So as you can see, the frequency starts higher and then progressively gets lower as it gets charged and discharged with higher voltages. So all these trials were run until visible deformation was found. So there were cracks visible to the naked eye, as well as an electron microscopy done to confirm that these cracks were indeed pervasive. So why is there a shift in the peak as
degradation occurs. So at first, I thought maybe the increase in intrinsic damping from a decrease in Q factor, which is how much energy gets preserved over how much energy gets dissipated, and the peak of maximum amplitude or the frequency as is found in Morrow et al. But as we'll see in the next slide, the Q factor does not follow this trend. So I hypothesized that instead of intrinsic damping, the presence of these microcracks are causing barriers at the specific nodes and antinodes of these frequencies, because these are not found in the initial resonant frequencies. So yeah, the Q factor does not display a significant trend, and this is perhaps overridden by the asymmetry for directional stress from the differences in charging versus discharging. So this is the asymmetry I was talking about. So this is a little bit less preserved in all the trials. So in sample 1, we found in the initial resonant frequency and the higher harmonics that there is a higher amplitude while discharging versus while charging. And this was not found in the other samples. So this might be due to lithium ion intercalation inhibiting microcantilever movement. So there could be some damping going on once it gets charged. However, in sample 2, we found a higher amplitude while charging. And this, again, was not found in the other samples. So I thought maybe this could be due to changes in film morphology, leading to greater grain spacing and mobility. So since these are not constant across all the trials, it would be nice to run some actual tests on these microcantilevers to see what's really going on. So the asymmetry I showed before is also a sign of normal function. And similarly, reversible peak shift is a sign of normal operation. And this was also found in the fundamental resonance frequency of sample 1. So basically, the frequency shifts depending on whether it's charging or discharging. And this could just be due to morphology changes due to ion intercalation and deintercalation changing film stiffness. So in conclusion, by using the high harmonics of microcantilever behavior in the dynamic mode, we can look for signs of failure, namely irreversible peak shift, and also monitor normal function, which is through an asymmetry in directional stress or the difference in amplitudes while charging versus discharging, as well as reversible peak shift. And since I was only able to work on this project the summer of my junior year, I would like to continue it by performing infrared spectroscopy or more detailed SEM, or scanning electron microscope imaging of these microcantilever films after the degradation occurs to confirm these electrochemomechanical processes. I would also like to investigate the specific nodes and antinodes of the frequencies with significant irreversible peak shift to see if it really is interfering at the places that we'd expect. Okay, so thank you for listening.
Safe to say that project struck a chord with me. Thank you, Hillary, for that amazing presentation. We will now open it up to any questions.
That was like a great presentation. I was just wondering, why did you look into any other alternatives other than nickel oxide?
No, so Our lab for microcantilever testing only used nickel oxide, but I know that this is part of a larger project using, I think, CV graphs to determine like similar failure mechanisms, and they used, I think, some alloys of copper instead. But in terms of the microcantilever sensing, we only used nickel oxide.
Anyone else?
Hillary, congratulations on your project and your matriculation into Harvard. I know you're testing a proof of concept in this with microcantilevers. So what comes very close to what is out there in the market or used in the research lab? And did you compare your shifts to what you see? You probably don't have something that is a very comparable prototype, but there has to be something that you used as a standard that is used now. So did it use the same nickel oxide where you were seeing that particular chelation that's causing the peak?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that's also something I've been wanting to look into. So I mentioned that, did I mention it before? That prior research has been focusing on IR and X-ray spectroscopy, but pseudocapacitors haven't really, I suppose, hit the market yet in the same way that batteries and even traditional capacitors have. So there has been very little research in general on pseudocapacitors, much less on nickel oxide. I could find barely any past literature on that. But those other types of monitoring with X-ray or Raman, they can't really compare because here we're measuring something completely different. So we're trying to link these trends with the degradation that we know is occurring. But those other methods use different, well, it's just a very different methodology, and I don't know if it would be easy to compare to this. But in terms of efficiency, I would also like to see if this is actually, because we only ran 3 trials, I would like to do it with more and see if these trends hold up.
Does anyone else have any other questions? I don't see anyone, so thank you. Okay, as Sam, Shreya, and I are all seniors, we will have 3 juniors, Jae-hee Nam, Peter Kim, and Achet Manoj, take over for the next portion of our symposium. Can you 3 please come forward?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jae-hee Nam.
My name is Peter Kim.
And my name is Achet Manoj.
The senior class of 2026 is graduating the program and will be continuing on their journeys outside of Tenafly High School. These 13 seniors managed to not only persevere, but also excel.
You all have served as an amazing example for the underclassmen. From giving advice during periods 3 and 4 to earning recognition in regional and national competitions, thank you. Seniors, when your name is called, please come to the front.
Yuval Amitai.
Samantha Cho.
Abhinav Day.
Lena Han.
Noah Jackson.
Sunghoon Ju.
Erica Lee.
Shannon Lee.
Matan Peleg.
Shreya Sybil.
Fady Tamimi.
Edward Wong.
And Hillary Shia.
Thank you once again for everything you've done for the program. You're leaving big shoes for us to fill.
Following the footsteps of the graduating senior class are the 12 incoming sophomores, the science research class of 2029. We wish you the best of luck in taking advantage of the many opportunities this program presents and finding your unique interests. Freshmen, please rise at your seats.
You guys can sit down, thank you. Last but definitely not least, we would again like to express our deepest gratitude to our 3 science research teachers who guided us through our individual research paths and shaped us into the people, students, and researchers we are today.
Ms. Subramaniam, thank you for serving as an inspiration for us and pushing each and every one of your students to be their best. We appreciate all of your advice and encouragement.
Mr. Brandstetter. Thank you for creating such a collaborative environment in our science research class, the time you dedicate to each one of your students, and always being enthusiastic about our research.
Mrs. Keener, thank you for your enthusiasm, guidance, and support throughout the year and making sure our work is always the best it can be. Whether through the monthly meetings or conversations in class, you truly pushed us to become the best.
And Ms. Wolfsagel, thank you for all your support and dedication towards science research. We have a small token of our appreciation for you. Before we break away, we want to say how proud we are of each and every presenter today. Your dedication, curiosity, and persistence are what science is all about.
We will now be breaking off into poster presentations. We ask that you draw a number from the spin with a poster number and that you go to the number assigned to you. You will have an opportunity to see other posters, so please report to your assigned number first, and you may proceed to other posters afterwards if you wish.
Have a wonderful evening, and congratulations again to all our researchers.
Okay, thank you so much. So for our poster session, what we're going to ask, we don't have anything formal, but we're going to ask every parent to visit one poster. You can read the poster or ask the student to present the poster to you, and we ask that you ask at least one question. That's what we're asking from the parents. So take a number out of this bin. There is another bin on the other side. So please take a number and have a chat about a poster. Thank you guys for coming.